Welcome to Conversation for the Soul. I'm Allison Gregory, and today I'm here with Alisha Braché. And Alisha has an amazing page on Instagram that I follow called Cosmic Gateway. And so I had to have her on. Welcome, Alisha, as my cat puts his butt up here. This is going to be, I'm just going to say real quick for anybody that watches me with any regularity, I'm in a new space now. I used to live in an RV full time. We just moved into this little house and we're remodeling. So I'm sitting literally with my feet kicked up on the couch. So my cat will probably be bouncing all over the place during this, but he clearly loves your energy, Alisha, as do I. Welcome. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you. I always make jokes when I'm in sessions with clients, and I said, if there's animals or kids in the house, expect them to be really active.
Well, the cat butt just proves that. Well, there's so many things I want to dive into with you tonight, but the first thing is your Instagram page. Okay, I was just telling Alisha before we got on here, I love the Cosmic Gateway. I really love learning about the energies, the Schumann Resonance, what's going on, what to expect. And it really feels like what you post is always in alignment with what I'm feeling. And then I'm like, well, this Cosmic Gateway person, I need to check her out. I click through and it's Alisha Braché, who I've seen many times on other podcasts. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. So anyway, I'll shut up now and let you talk a little bit. But can you just explain?
I love that. I didn't realize that my identity wasn't.
Well, you do have an Alisha Braché Instagram as well.
Yes,
I'll post all your stuff below so everybody can find it if they're listening or watching. But I would love you to talk a little bit about all of that. The Schumann Resonance, I'm not sure I have my brain wrapped around it. Maybe you could do a little explanation for everybody briefly on what that is, and then tap into what is it that you're doing on the Cosmic Gateway page with all of that information, and how do you get all that information?
Thank you. Yeah. I guess it's been tracking my own progress and journey. And I didn't come across the Schumann Resonance till about 2017. And I just knew that there was something that was going on that was making me just outpour with emotion that I just couldn't factor into what, my reality. There was nothing that was triggering me. There was nothing, but I was just this outpour of emotion. And I guess I came across the Schumann Resonance and I started to look into it and I started to track it. The Schumann Resonance is, well, there's different apps. I don't know the scientifics behind it. I always say, go and follow Alexis from Ascension Diary. She has much greater equipped knowledge around the science aspect of it. Mine is purely intuitive. But basically it's the electromagnetic field of the earth. So from my research and understanding up until about 2014, it was just it was at I think it was 7 point something hertz, and it never really jumped. It never really did anything that we've seen over the last few years. So it shows that the electromagnetic sphere of the earth is changing frequency and amplitude, and I guess it just is a tangible evidence to show that we're going through this ascension process, and the earth's frequency is making jumps and rises. So that's one part that I track, and I used to be able to nail it to a T. It was like, if the Schumann's doing this and I'm feeling this way, if the solar flares go off, so that's watching the sun activity. So I noticed that this came into my awareness around 2014. Once again, it was like I was going through this intensive period where my mental capacity was just off the charts. Like I was just, what I felt like was a real pressure cooker, and searching around found that it was correlating to solar flares. And every time the solar flare went off, I would go into these really heightened states of anxious, anxiety, like, and then as the years have progressed, and I guess I've gone through my own evolution, I find that I have a different interaction with the sun now. I find that when it goes off, I can feel very dizzy, lightheaded, very inspired, and feel quite good. But I think it took a while to move through some of the density within my own self to be able to come into that. And it's not always the way, it ebbs and flows. And then I guess the third thing is the solar winds. And I know that when the solar winds hit, you just need to sleep. You just feel restless, you feel tired, you feel grumpy, So it's just been years of observations of my own process. And then obviously putting it out there on a public forum, realized that everyone, was feeling, well, not everyone, but those who resonated, going through very similar things. And I think it's just validating when you can't place these sort of emotions or fatigue, there's no sort of real reason around it. And as you track it, it gives you a bit of an explanation that there's so much more energies that are buffering around, that are impacting our energetic field and our physical body. So I guess that's
It's crazy. So it's the solar winds, because there's some days where I'll just be plugging along, I'll feel great all morning, then all of a sudden I'm just like, my God, if I don't go lay down, I'm going to fall asleep standing up. It's just bam, it hits you. So those are the solar winds that are creating that, huh?
Yeah.
Wow. That's
So
wild.
generally we'll have some solar flares that go off. So the sun will release like a coronal mass ejection. And then it takes, if it's earth bound, if it comes into Earth's sphere, it raises the solar winds, and it just pushes density through Earth's sphere. And that for highly sensitive people, that makes us very lethargic and tired. And I see it in sort of this symbiotic relationship as we, the sun has a very prominent implications to our energy field and our energy body. And so as that sort of comes in, we may, go through this upswing. And then it's like, as the solar winds sweep through, it sort of brushes out debris, is how I see it. It's a fascinating thing.
It's interesting that, okay, we know we're going into Mercury retrograde here in a little bit and what that can do. But it seems like the sun and the earth, and I'm not a scientific person, I'm just going off of intuitive feelings here. It's like the sun and the earth have this thing going on with each other. And maybe it probably does with other planets too, but since I live on Earth, we'll talk about that. And it didn't really, it's probably always happened, but why is it increasing? Because of the ascension process, or what other things are happening with this sun-earth relationship that are helping us or doing whatever? That was a horrible question. Didn't make much sense. Hopefully you can go from there.
So there are cycles. There are 11-year solar cycles. So we've just entered, in the last maybe 18 months to 2 years, we've entered into a new solar cycle. So in that 11-year period, the sun will increase in its activity, and then it will get to a peak, and then it will decrease. So probably the last time I was feeling the intensity was at the peak of the last cycle, which was cycle 24. So we've entered into cycle 25 now. And so it's very interesting because we've entered into, let's say, 2 years of the new cycle. Yet what the sun is doing is showing that it's almost reaching its peak capacity of where it should be maybe in 2 or 3 years. We're already experiencing that. So I think that that's interesting, because a lot of people, some people look at things like the event and the solar flash, that, there will be one massive frequency burst from the sun that will kind of lift the planet into a higher frequency. And I think we've been being bombarded with these frequencies for years in preparation for maybe a larger one or multiple larger ones. And the way that it's tracking in this solar cycle, that it's maybe 2 years ahead, you can only sort of imagine where we may be in, a couple of years. So I find it all very fascinating.
What are your thoughts on that solar flash? It's such a controversial thing in the community because some people are like, that makes absolutely no sense, and other people are like, oh yeah, it's coming soon.
Yeah.
Where do you stand in that?
I kind of look, when I first went through what I call like the intensive part of my awakening, I was having dreams about solar flash. And I didn't know what that was. But I did have these dreams that there was chaos on the planet, and that there was this energy that sort of burst through, and it sort of rippled through, and it transformed people almost instantaneously. I've had many dreams about it over the years, so I was always sort of on the bandwagon, and I couldn't understand why people weren't, but I realized that everyone's at a different stage of consciousness. Everyone experiences their own reality in the way that they do. I went through what I call a precursor to it in 2018, where I was in a sleep state, and I was floating out in space, and this massive wave of energy came, and it completely knocked me. Like, I could feel it ripple through my body. And I know that a lot of people had a very similar experience at that time, and it changed me. From that, I woke up the next morning and I did feel like my body, my energy was very, very different. So, I mean, we'll have to wait and see. I don't think anyone really knows how it's going to unravel or play out. A lot of people that I speak to often have event or solar flash dreams. So, are we experiencing it in different timelines? Are we being prepared for it? I'm not sure, but I think that we're incrementally experiencing more and more energy from the sun, which is preparing us for something, whether that will be a gradual process or instantaneous. I guess it doesn't really matter. The thing is that we are evolving. One of the theories that I came to, because I remember it was such a trigger for me, like back in, years ago, when people would sort of debate about, oh, it's going to be a gradual, it's not going to be, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I don't understand, like, and I asked that question. I was like, why do people have different opinions around this? And the conclusion that I came to is that everyone has had a different level of ascension experience in their soul's experience. So there, I talk about the difference between personal ascension and planetary ascension. So personal ascension is what we hear about the sages, the gurus, people who have achieved rainbow body by meditating in caves for, long time, which is where they achieve their light body. But this is different. This is a process where the entire planet's going through that. And I have very distinct memories of being on other planets when there was a solar flash event. And so that's in my memory. So it's in my consciousness. So I know that it's possible. Doesn't mean that it's going to happen, but I think that's quite similar to other people who have dreams about that and believe that is that they've probably on their soul's journey been through a planetary ascension where that has occurred. So where other people who may have not gone through that experience on their soul's path and just gone through their own personal one and gone through the inner awakening, that's their reality. So that was sort of my seeing from all perspectives conclusion to that.
Well, I don't discount anything anymore. And I've gone back and forth on, do I believe it? Do I not believe it? Who knows? Something's happening, and that's clear to me. And, the part that I could never resonate with was the part where it was like, well, it's going to wipe out all the 3D people that just haven't gotten their shit together. And I'm like, that part doesn't work for me, but as far as, would it be great if a flash came through and people shifted instantaneously and everything got better? That would be amazing. I would love that. So we will wait and see what
We will wait
happens.
and see.
Yeah.
I mean,
Go
I've
ahead.
often said, like, if I don't have like bells and whistles and fireworks and like rainbow waves, I'm going to be pretty disappointed. Like, I want a refund.
Exactly. Exactly.
But,
Well, I don't know. Do you follow any QHHT? Because there's this gal, Alison Coe,
oh,
from
I
the
love
East
it.
Coast. Yeah, I love
Yeah.
her too. And she pretty much, I think, just got so fed up with it that she got off of YouTube. I hardly see her post anything anymore. And it's because she has so many clients talking about the solar flash. Literally, my husband and I were sitting on the beach watching out over the ocean, and this giant, massive solar wave came, all these beautiful stories, and it was coming soon. But what is soon in the universe's definition? Could be an eon from now.
I think when I had those dreams in early 2016, it was so vivid and it was so real, but I didn't have any context around it at that point. And then I was in a very low point. I hit a dark night of the soul. I was in the depths of it for a good, I'd say, year or two. And it was in one of those really low moments that Alison Coe came on the scene. And I went, oh my goodness, what she's talking about is what I've been dreaming about. Like, it was such beautiful validation. And over the years, I've connected with Alison and, formed, a beautiful connection with her and shared information and things like that. So, I do resonate with what she puts out there for sure. Yeah. So, but
I'd love to see more of her. I was really sad when she kind of like went dark for a while, but everybody's dealing with their own stuff, so I totally get it. So what do you know about the sun? Because this is something that has come into my awareness recently, that the sun is really a place where people live. People, entities, whatever, light bodies live. It's not really a hot surface. What can you shed light on when it comes to the sun, pun intended?
It's funny you say this. If I think about it, I've done journeys to the sun through sort of astral projection, and it's full of golden light. And I think that that's where a lot of highly evolved beings do reside and come from. I know, personally, I know a lot of friends who've had sessions or have that resonance that they are beings from the central sun, the grand central sun, and hold a lot of frequency on this planet. And I had a really rough day yesterday. It sort of ebbs and flows. And in those days where I just feel really disconnected, and I don't do well with that. I've learned that if I'm not here, I'm not here. But sometimes it's hard to know where I am or what I'm doing. And I woke up and I saw that there was this like tsunami on the sun this morning, and I just laughed and I was like, oh, clearly busy on the sun. And so I know that a lot of people, myself included, because I look at interactions of when I interact with certain people who have that sun resonance, and when we come together in communication, it does let off flares. And I joke and I'm like, oh, we're just like, there's aspects of us here on earth and there's aspects of us up there, and we're working the energies down here and up there. So I think that's about all I can say about that. But I do think that it's a thing for sure.
That's funny.
Do you connect with the sun in that way?
I received a channel, I think it was late last year, that talked about the central sun. And that was really, I hadn't had a lot of interaction or knowledge about the central sun, but it's been coming up lately in things I've been listening to, which is interesting. Now, the sun that we see up in the sky is not necessarily the central sun, correct?
Correct.
The central sun is like basically source, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. That's what I got out of it.
I think that our sun is a portal into this dimension directly from source. That's what I feel. Yeah.
Oh, wow. That makes sense. That resonates for me big time. Interesting. So you do astral travel, huh?
Yeah, you
You
could
do
say that.
lots of other things too with ETs and stuff and get visits. I
Mhm.
understand. I'd love to delve into that a little bit if you are willing to talk about it. When did this start presenting itself for you?
um, I say consciously in 2000, late 2015, but since unpacking that, I think it's always been there. Since I was young, very young. Um, and there's been various different interactions that I've had, but in the beginning, I went through a Kundalini awakening, or the biggest one that I had started to have like smaller Kundalini activations from about the age of 19, but I didn't understand what was happening. um, I would get like the shakes and energy running through me. I couldn't sleep. I was sort of, you could call manic maybe, for a couple of days, and then I'd just crash out. And I think the first time that it happened, I was like, did someone spike my coffee at the coffee shop? Because I'm just, but it was just like my energy channels were opening. And I spent, since my teenage years, a lot of time in meditation and energy work. And, so just incrementally, bit by bit. But 2015, I went through a massive surge, and up until that point, I was always under a teacher who would like close me down and go, "No, not yet." No. But I wasn't under a teacher that stage, and it took me 3 days to realize what was going on. I was like, "Oh, okay, that's what's happening." And it was shortly after that that I was overseas, and I came back home, and at nighttime, I just felt this presence, and there was a lot of stuff going on. And it was the first time I'd lived alone too, and I'd come home, and I felt this presence almost like watching me, and it was a little eerie. Like, I won't lie, it took me back to childhood, and that's a different story. But and then I was like laying in bed one night, and this energy was just pouring through me, and I could hear the frequency sounds of a spacecraft above my house. And at the time, I had a dog who used to sleep on my bed with me, and she just would not come into the room. um,
Wow.
and that night, I had seen some craft earlier that night, at a party. There was interdimensional crafts that were landing not far from where I live, and everyone was seeing them. And it scared a few people, and I was in awe of it. It was so beautiful. It was like the most beautiful thing, the energy. But this particular night, when I couldn't sleep, and I just knew there was this presence, and I just tried to close off and go to sleep, but there was this big burst of blinding white light in my room, and I got knocked out for probably 12 hours after that. Woke up very, very disoriented. So I think that was when I started to become more consciously aware that there were things happening in my experience, and that just sort of continued from that point on. Um,
So was it happening earlier in your life before that and you just didn't have awareness around it?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
So pretty much your whole
yeah,
life.
yeah, yeah. I
Wow.
mean, going back, I've unpacked a lot of that this year. I don't think I was ready to, because I think the earlier stages of my life weren't very positive experiences with ETs. Um, I was I have a lot of recall of being pulled out of my body and terrified to go to sleep at night, because I knew that they were coming to get me, and that they would take me out my window. I slept walked a lot as a child, so I would wake up disoriented outside my house many
Mm.
times, and that went on for years. Wake up wet, or my clothes being removed, things like that. So and yeah, it was quite traumatic because I didn't really understand it. But I knew that there was something happening. But I mean, that wasn't uncommon. My growing up was all sorts of paranormal activity happening all the time. So, you know.
Wow. So do your parents have any connection to this realm?
Yeah, look, my dad, I mean, is very much into sort of the ET stuff. And so when I was growing up, he was always reading, books about grey aliens, or channelings from Barbara Messiniak and the Palladians. Like, I sort of grew up with that. So it was kind of very open in my household. Both my parents, I always say my dad's a healer, my mum's a psychic. So it kind of runs in the lineage.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when you were a little kid and you'd tell them these stories of what happened to you, or go, I don't know what's going on here, were they able to help you and console you through that? Or were they just like, yeah, I had a great imagination, kid?
I actually never told anyone. I never told
Wow.
anyone. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, what a heavy thing to carry as a little kid.
I just, it was more this year that I called up. I was in the middle of like a lot of flashbacks, a lot of memory, a lot of abductions that occurred. And I called my mom. I'm like, I need to talk about my childhood. I guess that's a phone call a mother never wants to hear.
Oh, geez.
um, but the paranormal stuff was, I mean, we had a lot of poltergeists in the room. Like, as a child, like, I'd walk into rooms and I would interact, like all the electric appliances would switch on, off and on, off and on. I can't begin to tell you how many light bulbs I would blow just walking into a room.
Mm.
And we just sort of laugh about it. It was, yeah. And when I found my first teacher, I was like 16. And my parents were actually studying under him. He had like a development circle, and I just wanted to join. Let me, I was too young. And when he met me, he said, I've never seen a kid like you. He said, you're like, what do you call me? The analogy of like, I'm a horse that's like unbridled. Just my energy just running wild. He goes, you need to learn how to harness it and
Wow.
utilize it and work with it, because it was I wouldn't say it was detrimentally impacting me, but it was it was creating a lot of disruption.
Mm. So did you have a lot of friends growing up?
Yeah.
Okay. What did they think of this?
Look, it was so normal to me. I often think about this. Maybe they thought I was crazy. Maybe they were interested. I don't know. Like, I remember, like, I think I was like 10 or 11. We started like a witches coven. I mean, I was just
I love it.
yeah, I mean, I didn't really struggle on that level. I always joke, like, in primary school, I was doing assignments about haunted houses and poltergeists and different alien races. It was just kind of normal for me.
Wow. If you and I were the same age and grew up together, we'd be best friends for sure. Oh, that's awesome. So let's, go fast forward. You get your awareness now around things that are happening, and you are physically having things happen to you. Can you share a little bit about that and how
Yeah.
that transpired and came to be?
Yeah. So that was around the time of my Kundalini awakening. I was getting a lot of downloads about immaculate conception, and that there was this child that wanted to come through me. At the time, I was not okay with it at all.
I
I just got
bet.
out of a long-term relationship. I was planning to start a business. I was trying to start a new chapter in my life, and I didn't sort of factor that in. But that sort of intertwined with the contact experience that I was having, because as I mentioned, there's bright lights in the room, and I'd wake up and I had cuts and incisions on my stomach that I couldn't place. And I just had all these vivid dreams about these children that wanted to come through me. And there was just a lot of signs and synchronicities. And towards the end of 2015, I went through what I call interdimensional conception with another higher aspect. You can call it counterpart, or twin connection. And it was from that morning I woke up and I knew something was different. Something was really strange in my body. And I was just emanating all this light. I had no concept around that at that time, but I was being strongly guided to look into like Mother Mary, and that was the downloads that I was getting, and I was like, no, this is not possible. This is not possible at all. And you know, I had a break. Like that was a big burden for me to carry. Like to think that to be bringing through, you know, a higher dimensional being, that's a lot for the psyche, you know.
Oh God, yeah.
And questioning my reality, and am I going crazy? And but as time progressed, I would feel this intense light in my womb just growing and growing, and the contacts became stronger. I would have random people contact me at times saying, you're pregnant, you're bringing through this child, I saw you on a spacecraft last night, you were having incisions put on. Like there was validation that was occurring outside of my reality that I couldn't deny it, and I couldn't deny what was going on in my body. So I mean, that created the dark night of the soul for me, because I just had to dive deep and try and understand what was occurring. And in the beginning, at the rate that my stomach was expanding, I was like, is this going to happen in like 3 months? Like I was incrementally waking up each day and growing and growing and growing. But as my frequency dipped, so did the growth, and then it kind of plateaued for a long time. And I spent that entire year researching and trying to understand if it was possible. Has anyone else gone through this? What is occurring? And I managed to find a lot of other women that had gone through similar or were going through similar. I researched about the past history. I started with Mother Mary, and then I sort of worked my way back through the different ages, Egypt, Lemuria, and realized that is a thing, So I started to write blogs about it, and more each day women come to me who go through that. My understanding of this process is that it is there's no linear time frame to it. It's about being able to hold the frequency, and it's a part of the ascension process too. I mean, I've gone through so many deep levels of healing with this experience. I do believe that at some point I will give physical birth to these children. That's what I've been told the entire way along, but not until the planet is at a vibration that can hold space for these children to thrive in.
Okay, we know time's a construct, but how I'm trying to, and there's probably no earthly way to explain this. So you have this energy growing in you like you're pregnant, but yet no birth occurs, but yet you're going to have these children at some point. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
How brave of you to put that out there. I mean, you are amazing. Because, think of all those poor women suffering in silence, thinking, I can't say this to anybody. They're going to think I'm a wackadoodle. And, and now it's coming to the forefront. You're bringing awareness to it. Now more people can feel like they're not alone. That's awesome. That is beautiful.
I mean, probably the most terrifying thing that I've ever done, but the most liberating was, originally I just blogged on an anonymous blog. There was no name attached, but that was what I was told I had to do, because I was so angry, and I was so, that so many emotions that I've gone through, I was partnerless, going through that process in the initial stages anyway. And I had no money. I'd lost my friends, my family, my sanity. Like in that year, I kind of lost everything, and then had to rebuild from there. And I was like, what do you want me to do? Just yelling, screaming, pleading. And I was like, because in the research that I'd done, I found this thing called cryptic pregnancy, where women would have longer gestation periods. And it's funny because all these little things had come into my awareness over many, many decades. Prior to the conception process for me, I was starting to see things online about women going through longer gestation periods, and I just kind of went, kept swiping, whatever. And I had met a lot of women who had been told that they couldn't conceive, and then found out that they were pregnant. Much later into it, these pregnancies wouldn't show up on blood tests or scans and things like that. So I'd had all this like propped into my consciousness based on other people's experiences. I was just like, oh, okay, cool, I guess. But yeah, and then obviously there's like the hybrid aspect to it as well. So I went down the rabbit hole of hybrid children, realized that there was components that were like mine, but it was a little bit different. And obviously looking at the aspect of interdimensional conception and immaculate conception, like conception, there's all these different terminologies. Really realizing it's one and the same, really. And I think that's always been part of my role, is to kind of bridge the gaps between like the ET and the spiritual world, or the hybrids, and that I think it's all interlinked. It's just different belief systems and structures. But I think being able to speak about it, and I mean, I run a pregnancy support circle once a month for women going through this, and it started off slow because a lot of them are very fragile and very scared and very confused, and I understand that. But it's grown significantly, and there's quite a large number of us that meet once a month, and I think there's a lot of activation that my stomach's just absolutely pulsing as I'm talking about it. There's a lot of activation that occurs with us connecting, and it kind of fills my heart with joy, because sometimes it's happened a number of times that the soul of the child who's yet to be born will contact the mother and tell them to contact me and say that I'm Auntie Alisha, and that I can,
Wow. That really got me. Wow.
Gets me too.
Ooh. What was there a pivotal point to where you became okay with it? Because you said it brought you to the depths of your dark night. At what point did it take the switch and you were like, oh, perhaps this is a beautiful mission or something?
I think that was always lingering in the outer periphery, because in the dark night, like there was like months and months that I just didn't want to be here anymore. Like I think a lot of people can relate to that, but you just want to go home. Like the density is just too hard. It's too much. It's too much stress. But every time I would just I would plead. I'd go to bed at night and I'm like, please don't let me wake up in the morning. And then I would put my hands on my belly and I could feel this pulsing. I was like, oh wow, there's life that's like emerging inside me. Like I can't go anywhere. I got to do this. But I think it was my mind. It was my mind, and I think the disbelief of people around me. And I think my sensitivity really kicked in a lot, because I could start to read people's thoughts, and that was really detrimental to me. I think I kind of came into a level of acceptance probably 2 years in, because I was always grasping at straws and like dates, and I mean, we can all relate to that, right?
Yep.
And I just kind of surrendered into just make it an extension of your essence and your being. Do the best that you can each day, and don't get caught up by expectations of dates or when or how. Just keep moving on and just keep doing what you're meant to be doing. And I think, so I just sort of kind of guess kept carrying on and allow that to be an extension of my life. I think the hardest thing was trying to face people that I had told, and then they're like, well, where's this child? And, you know, and I'm like, well, I'm still carrying, and the looks and the, you know, I think other people's opinions really got to me. And so I just kind of realized that I only share it with people who need to know. And just, yeah. So, but yeah, I think the first year was the hardest because I was like anticipating this end date that everything was going to miraculously come together in my life. And when I got to that and nothing sort of eventuated, I was like, that was my greatest fear. Like, how long is this going to go on for? But there's always deeper levels of surrender. So,
Well,
yeah.
in the quantum field, it makes complete sense to me.
Mm.
You know, because it can all be happening simultaneously, although we're on this linear timeline and we're going, where is it? You know, but the quantum, it's all just kind of spinning around out there, and we're just like, oh, well, you know, at some point I'm just going to pull it in, there's going to be, and then it's going to happen. And like you said, these children are eventually going to come, but they're going to come when it's all right, when everything aligns, you know, which makes strange. It makes sense to me, but it makes sense to me. So
I think they've been the
I'm
greatest
sorry,
teachers
go ahead.
for me. I think they've already been the greatest teachers for me in terms of like understanding time's not linear. And, you know, I would, you know, notice how going through timeline jumps, I would stabilize a frequency. And in tandem with that, I would watch my belly expand or contract based on the frequency that I was holding in any particular moment. So I literally have a tangible measuring tool. That's kind of cool, right?
So it still happens. You still
I go through
grow.
the flux.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I think, I mean, over the years, I gained a lot of weight. And I think a part of that was like trying to hide or kind of, you know, if I could just gain weight everywhere in my body, then I could just look like I'm carrying a lot of weight. And there was that aspect of like hiding. And when I look back in my ancestral lineage and look at the women who had these taboo pregnancies, and I was like, oh God, there's so much clearing going on here, you know. But yeah, and then this year I've had to really focus on the physicality of transforming my body. And you know, I've shedded all the excess weight only to keep my tight little belly bumps, you know, intact. So it's much more noticeable now. But
Wow.
I think it's just the level of acceptance.
I'm curious to know the ETs that you communicate with and work with, because I'm hearing something every once in a while, and I don't know if you're picking it up. Maybe I'm just picking it up because I have headphones on, but there's like this little, like, I wouldn't even begin to know how to describe it, like a chirpy purr thing that comes in every once in a while. It
really?
sounds very it sounds very otherworldly to me. It'll be interesting if it picks up on this recording, because you're talking and it's like doing this thing, and I'm like, something's going on here. So
I can feel the frequencies come through. Yeah.
So who are you, like, when you say they tell me, is it the children that are telling you they'll eventually be born, or is it other beings that are telling you this? And
Yeah, it's mainly in connection with my children. You know, I feel them sort of come in and out over the years. sometimes I feel like I'm very physically holding them. I can feel moves and, like the physical manifestation of the pregnancy. And other times it's just purely energetic. So it's like this kind of coming in and out of frequency, if you will. So yeah, mainly I'm guided by them. I think they're the best guides that I can have, honestly, them and my higher self. But I do work with a lot of galactic beings. In the beginning, it was the Arcturians primarily. And that's what I kept hearing as I was working through my, what I call my energy alignment process, working on other people. I would hear like a telepathic transmission that I was like channeling the Arcturian ray. I didn't understand what that meant at the time. I just passed the message on to the client and they're like, what's up, but I think primarily I work with Arcturian energies. They tend to be the ones that show me a lot of the healing techniques and modalities that I work with. And they downloaded a whole stack of different techniques that I've worked into different programs over the years. So I'm very grateful for their guidance. Or I kind of see it as like that aspect of myself. It's just another aspect of myself that is reminding me of what I already know and being able to apply that. But depending on the person, like I'm not really well versed in the cosmology or galactic genealogy as most people. I actually just learn through my sessions. So I see things in colors and then they'll tell me where they're from. They'll tell me a little bit about themselves, but there's definitely a very strong Lyran presence that I have, which is like a very gold frequency sort of lion energy. Friends of mine have seen
I can see it around you. It's beautiful.
Some people can see me shapeshift into it. That's happened, but yeah. So I think I just have a mixture of different galactic connections, but I think probably one of my most special galactic connections would be with one of the mantic beings. So he's the geneticist who oversees my pregnancy process. And one night I was traveling and actually there's a place on the Gold Coast, Broad Beach, and I was staying in an apartment there and I was out on the balcony one night and there was just spacecraft flying everywhere. And I was like, oh God, it's going to be one of those nights. And the frequency just went up. And I thought, oh God, I got to go to bed. I know when I'm about to be worked on or worked over, as I like to call it. And so I just sort of put myself to bed, lay down, and I can just feel everything that is working through me. And this particular night, there and I close my eyes, and then next thing I can feel this presence in the room. I open my eyes, and this is Manta just looking down at me. And I was like, oh, hello. And yeah, so he sort of pops in and out. So I've been taken, and he's shown me when I agreed to this process that I'm going through, and how he was assigned to be the overseer to look at, how I can infuse different genetics and sort of work with this process. He told me that in the way that I'm doing it, it had never been done before, but I was, as a soul, very keen to, which sounds like my personality. I'm like, hasn't been done? Great, let me try. But he always assures me that the process is going really well, and that he's very proud of me. And, in my harder times, I've asked, like, what about the implications on my human vessel? Because it's taxing, And he's like, well, that never really came into consideration.
Thanks.
Fair enough. But, I'm really grateful, because I think that the people that I have around me in my life are very supportive now. It didn't start off that way, but it has become that way. So
that's just what I was going to ask you. How does Alisha have a life outside of all of this stuff going on? I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah, look, I was a hermit for many years. Like I just didn't go out. I very dedicated to my work and the ascension process. But in the last few years, I've been a little bit more social. I found that I can manage my frequency a lot better and going out into the outside world and not be so wobbled around so much. And, the friends that I have who are connected to me know my story, they know my journey, and they're supportive of that. So, I couldn't ask for much better than that, but
That's beautiful.
it
Because
wasn't.
we're here to enjoy it here too,
Yeah. So yeah, so it's been, I things are so much better than what they were, and I'm in the process of writing my story, and obviously it's taking me back to the days where I was confused and I was lost and I was lonely and I felt like I had been abandoned. But you get through that, and it's I often, when I open up, I've written like many versions of this story, and every time I get inspired and I write a little bit and then I come back to them like, oh, that's crap, scrap that, start again. But I think weaving all of that together now, and often I have like futuristic dreams where we are in New Earth, what I call New Earth, the vibration of the planet's much higher. I've met with my children who are teenagers, to talk about, and in one dream, talking to my daughter, and I was saying like, do you realize how hard it was? Do you understand that no one believed me at the time? She was like shocked, like it was like the most normal thing in the world. So I think if I didn't have that connection through my intuition, my vision, my psychic perception, and through my dream state, I think it would have made this process a lot harder, for sure.
Well, yeah, I mean, you need all those things. Otherwise, I think you'd think you're losing your mind, really. And then I always question people that are institutionalized for mental problems and go, maybe there's really something there. We're just not willing to see or believe what they're saying, But you are a beautiful beacon of light, my dear. You are just, I can feel your energy through the computer lines. It's beautiful. And you are doing such powerful and much needed work.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And I'd love for you, if you have anything going on right now at the Cosmic Gateway you want to share, you got any classes coming up, anything people should know about, and give us a brief of where we can find you too.
Yeah, cool. So Cosmic Gateway, so it's www.cosmicg and then the letter 8way.com. I also have New Earth Children, which is where I kind of develop this work, working with the higher frequency children that are coming in. At the moment, I am running or reoffering my Ascension program. So it runs over 8 sessions, and it's basically what I was downloaded in the beginning of how to work through my own ascension process with tools and techniques and clearing out through like the deepest levels of programming. And I ran that for a long time, and then I sort of put a pause on it. I only do things when I'm inspired. So I've been guided to pick that up again. So that, and obviously just individual sessions. But if anyone wants to dive in deep, that's an offering that I do highly recommend. And probably later in the year, when people have gone through that, then if they choose to, I take them through like practitioner training to teach people to do the work that I do. So
wonderful. Great. Well, thank you so much. I'm so grateful you agreed to join me tonight.
Thank you, Alisha, and thanks for staying up late.
Oh, absolutely. That nap helped. And I'm sure there's something else going on in that nap too that my higher self knows all about. But anyway, I won't take any more of your time, my dear. I appreciate you coming on here. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
And all your
Awesome.
info will be posted below. Alrighty. Bye-bye.